have Dr. Aumatma, or also Dr. Om, and she is a specialist in infertility. She's been helping people worldwide with this. She has a background in nutrition, fertility, and also integrates holistic into helping people start being able to have families. Would love to hear more about your background and how you got into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a naturopathic doctor by training, and I was in practice for, at that point, probably about 5 years already when I woke up next to this man, had married, and he had kept saying he wanted to have kids. And I, like, literally every time he was like talking about children, my uterus would just be like turning cartwheels, like, no. Uh, so I was like, oh crap, what's wrong? Like, I'm so confused why my body does not want any part of this. And what I realized was just that over time, I realized it was the wrong person. But in that moment, I literally went into a tailspin of like, what am I doing? How do I get for like, how do I preserve my fertility so that I can have a kid when I'm ready? And yeah, and that was pretty much the starting point of me like just deep diving into all the research and like, how do I figure this out for myself so that I can be good when I want to have kids. It like I never went into it with the intention that I would be talking to other people about this. And here we are 10 years after that point, and I am still in this world. Like, I realized as I was going through all the research, just like how little we're taught as women about fertility, about hormones, about what's possible for our bodies. And then simultaneously, I feel like the modern world has just kind of like taken more and more of this liberty away from us of like, sure, you can have babies when you're older, but you need to like walk into a clinic and do the whole hormone thing. And that's fine. I'm grateful that it's available, but I am not sure that it needs to be the default for every person. So I really like hold the space of I want you to, for all women to have the choices and the type of family that they choose at the age that they choose, and how to do that within the context of what's possible within our bodies, what's our body doing, like how do we figure it all out and put the pieces together so that we can have a baby when we do want.
Yes, I love that because there's so much stress about like having a baby by a certain time due to, the risk factor, all of that, which, yes, that plays a role, but providing health to actually do it on your own terms when you feel healthy. And you said you listened to your body and your body was telling you, okay, this isn't the right person. And so stepping into that area of listening to the body. But what would be then some of the strategies that you think would be good for people to integrate to help them to be able to preserve their maybe fertility eggs, or, just overall healthy, so then they can have a baby when they feel right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much. I would say like the three starting points that I feel like everyone should and can do on their own all the time is start with food. Like, what are you putting into your body? How much of it can you make organic within reason? Like, not every single thing, but as much as you can within reason, like make it organic, make it whole foods, stay away from the processed stuff. And then second, sleep is a really big factor. And I don't even think that we realize how much of a factor it is because melatonin has a direct impact on our ovaries. So without melatonin, without good quality sleep, and constantly like being in that cortisol driven state, which is like the stressed out woman, we are putting like having a negative impact on the ovaries, and then not having enough melatonin is also essentially like a double whammy on our ovaries and the ability to make good quality eggs so that we can have children when we really want to. So those are my two like top big ones. The third would probably be getting rid of toxins in our environment. And there is so much research on so many toxins, and like I was just talking to another one of my colleagues in this space last week, and she was like, the average person is exposed to 80,000 toxins daily. 80,000. I was like, whoa, that's way more than I had in mind. And she's like, well, it's not in massive doses where we're gonna like every single day, like going to toxic overload, but a lot of them are being accumulated. A lot of them take like 15, 20 years to like get out of our system. So if we're not doing things that are conscious around toxins and lowering our toxin burden, then we're getting to that point a lot faster. And that's going to have a detrimental effect on our future fertility.
Yeah, those are great shares to kind of dive deeper into each of those. So, like for the melatonin one of how that affects the ovaries, is that necessarily like where you're able to sleep, where you're resting, you're lowering the stress levels in the body, and then you're having melatonin be produced so you're more regulating, or is there kind of more details to how that affects the ovaries?
Yeah, that's a great question. So melatonin is actually the rejuvenate button in our body. So when our body produces melatonin, and there are a lot of things that disrupt the production of melatonin, and we can get into those. When our body naturally produces melatonin, it gives a flood response in our entire endocrine system, including our ovaries, that we can rejuvenate, right? It's like that time, it's the signal in the body that is like heal, restore, rejuvenate, not the opposite of that. Like, no, let's not use our resources, but we're like replenishing our resources. And that's essentially what, like, when you wake up from a really good night's sleep and you're like, oh, I feel rested, I feel rejuvenated, I'm ready for my day. Most of us are not feeling that on a regular basis. So when we don't have that experience, we are essentially not refueling or not restoring that battery that we have in our bodies. And when we're running on that, like just above E, we are, it's taking away from other parts of our function. And reproductive system, you can kind of think of as like the unnecessary. And for those of you that can't see me, I'm putting quotes around unnecessary because as much as like when we're ready to have children, we're like, oh my God, this is a need. Like, I really, really, really want this. But until that point, we're like, yeah, whatever. Like, yeah, it's good that it hasn't happened yet. I'm on birth control, whatever it is. But when we don't have that signal to restore and we run on the E, and when we're constantly at that point, like there isn't a point where we're actually getting to fill our cup all the way full, then our body says, well, what are some things that I could take off my plate? Like, I have too much to do. What can I take off? Reproductive system is the first to go because you actually don't need it for your survival. Believe it or not, like you will be fine if you do not have a child. Your body is like, well, that's one that I don't need. Take that away. And then there will be others along the way. It'll be like, oh, the thyroid. Yeah, I guess I can like, don't need that one too much. Or the gallbladder. Don't need that one too much. Our body like picks and chooses which systems to turn off when we're in that almost E state. It's sort of like a car that the car is like, well, I don't need that part. I guess I can like let that go. And you can like run on that for a few years and you're like, one more thing. Yeah, I can let that go. And the car's like literally falling apart, but it's still running, right? So
Yeah.
the owner of that car is like, well, it's good. It's getting me to where I need to go. But in reality, it's like literally falling apart from the inside. And that's kind of what's happening to our body if we're constantly just above E all the time.
Yeah, huge aha moment there of like, where your body chooses for survival mode.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't want your body to be, skipping out on certain areas. So for sleep, then, how many hours do you recommend that people should be sleeping, especially if they want to start trying to have a baby?
hmm We So different people will need different number of hours of sleep. That's the tip of the iceberg as far as sleep goes. It's like, great, you got the number of hours that you should get. But how many I can reflect on this in my own life. Like how many times do we wake up and we're like, yeah, I got 8 hours, but damn, I could use like three more. So, right? So that's telling me a couple of things. It's like 8 hours on average should be good. Most people fluctuate between 7 and 9. When we're needing extra healing or like extra filling of the cup, I would say we even get towards 10 would be amazing. So it can really vary based on where you are, what's happening in your life, how stressed out you are, and like how long have you been running on E is kind of the number of months you need. So if you've been running on E for 10 years, I'd say at least 10 months of extra sleep to rejuvenate and kind of fill that cup fully. Uh, but then the other thing is what's affecting melatonin production. And melatonin is traditionally, like everyone knows of it as like, oh yeah, I could take that to sleep. Our body's own production of melatonin is very different from a capsule that has melatonin in it. And our body's production of melatonin is disrupted by a few major things. One is things that get your cortisol up in the evening. So working out in the evening would for me be like an absolute no, because if you're going to work out, you're releasing cortisol and adrenaline, which is the antithesis of melatonin, and it's actually going to delay the production of melatonin at night. So that's a big one. The second one is eating high protein meals at night. Same effect. Increased cortisol. Sorry, you're not going to sleep very well. And people will often say, like, oh, but what do you mean I need my protein at night? I'm like, no, eat your protein earlier in the day, get your cortisol up. You need the cortisol throughout the day, and then lower the amount of protein that you eat at night. And ideally, you have more of like a vegetarian or vegan meal at night, which will help support your melatonin production. So that would be the second thing. And then the third thing is all of the screens that we have around us, right? Like
Mhm.
TVs, computers, laptops, iPhones, literally like all of the screens that are putting out blue light, which our eyes see, essentially turns off our ability to produce melatonin. So for those of us that are like watching TV right before bed, or we're like, I've been trying to break this habit of like being on my phone right before bed. And if you need to, or if that's your habit, or you're like that's how you relax, then really using like blue light filter glasses at the minimum to negate that impact of the blue light on your pineal gland where your melatonin is going to be produced.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And creating like a bedtime routine, whether that be reading, meditating, something else that you can take you away from the screens.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. And then
absolutely.
for the food, like, okay, so less protein. And then would you also suggest less carbs since carb is, an energy source and try just going more vegetable vegan or
Well, you could, yes, you could do mostly vegetables. We tell people, like, hey, it's okay to have a little bit of unprocessed carbohydrates at night. So we're really talking about complex carbohydrates like brown rice or quinoa or lentils or beans, right? Like
yeah.
things that are naturally occurring in nature, but you're not necessarily eating bread and pasta for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah, actually healthy sources of carbs. I like
Yeah.
that. And I know we're talking about more of like the reproductive system with the female body. Does this also go in play for males and testosterone and helping also the fertility in male, even with like
Yeah.
the melatonin in? Okay.
Yeah, it's very similar. The melatonin is going to have an effect on the ovaries just as much as the testicles. What's really interesting is that they've done very like small scale studies on men and giving them melatonin. and they actually found that it had a detrimental effect on sperm. So basically, like your own internal production of melatonin, as for men, is actually even more vital because we don't want you relying on melatonin supplementation to get good quality sleep. So that's definitely important. Um, the testosterone cycle is actually similar but different. Testosterone is going to be produced like optimally between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., which is why like most men are like, hey, sex in the morning. Awesome. That's what I want. Um, so that 4 to 6 a.m. time is where testosterone is being produced. And that's really like the morning time is where you want to stack your workouts because pushing that to later in the evening is still going to stimulate cortisol production and for guys testosterone production, which then throws off their testosterone cycle. So it's ideal to like stick to the working out in the morning, and then complex carbohydrates, same thing, like the eating protein, high protein meals will most definitely have an increase in cortisol, which then puts you in in a good state if it's during the day, and in a anti-sleep state if it's during the evening.
Yeah, yeah. I love how you've integrated also like the timing of the workouts, like with fitness, how that can even impact fertility, doing it correctly within your hormones to help
Yeah.
keep things balanced, to help keep things good. Thank you so much. Those are huge aha moments of knowledge bombs for our audience. And for the aspect of, okay, with the toxins now, there's so many toxins in
Hmm.
the world,
Hmm.
more and more, unfortunately. Is there a certain type of, I guess, detox that you kind of recommend people maybe starting with if they that's related to fertility to help?
Yes. So there are a few. When someone is just starting out on this journey and they're like, okay, I'm ready to get pregnant, what do I need to do? Have kind of a checklist of things that they should go through in their home to detox their environment. That could be the kitchen, the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, like literally just every single part of our toxin burden in the body. There are a few that stand out for me always. One is phthalates. Phthalates are literally in anything that smells good. So if you're like at the store, you're like, oh, that smells so good, don't buy it. That's got phthalates in it,
Like
right? And
candle
that,
sprays.
yes, yes, anything that you're like, oh, so good, it's unfortunately not good for you. It sucks, but like a healthier option is something like essential oils with the diffuser is going to have the same like smell good benefits. Essential oils, if they're pure high quality essential oils, will also actually support your endocrine system. So a lot of essential oils are known to have impacts on different hormone cycles. Sorry. So essential oils is a really good alternative. Glyphosate is my number two. And glyphosate is going to be essentially on all cotton products. And that is unfortunate because the biggest cotton products that we use as women are pads and tampons. They are literally made from cotton, which is almost always sprayed with glyphosate. There are organic pads and tampons, which in theory don't have glyphosate. I am still extremely cautious about those. They're a good like transition product, but A, they're super expensive. B, they're still not that great for the environment. And C, like they're probably like grown in a cotton farm right next to the one that got sprayed. So, like, how good is it? They're like, well, we didn't spray it ourselves, but if it was in the air, we can't help it. So, the glyphosate products, usually like switching out pads and tampons to organic cotton, reusable cloth napkins or menstrual cups, which are really great. those are really good alternatives. And I love that they also support the environment as a side effect or a side benefit. So that's a good swap out to do as soon as you hear this, honestly. Like, you don't need to wait till you're trying to conceive. This is a good thing for us to do, period. Um, and then the third one would be really like paying attention to all the plastics in our environment and plastic food containers, plastic water bottles, plastic uh in the lining of aluminum cans like tomatoes or beans or whatever, they're all lined with plastic. So really watching out for exposures wherever possible is a really good idea. And then the one that's been like a lot of my colleagues and I have been talking a lot about all of the clothing, like literally, why is it all female clothes are now spandex? It's like really hard to find pure cotton clothing, and the yoga pants and stuff like that, the super tight stuff that we are sitting in and sweating in all day is literally leaching plastic that our skin is absorbing. So if we changed out those three, four things, we would probably make a massive improvement to our overall hormone balance and future fertility, or now fertility, wherever you're at in your family planning.
Yeah, yeah, those are some huge things to just kick start and start implementing as well. I love that. And then for anybody that's maybe doing like a deeper detox, do you recommend time to start rebuilding before they start trying to conceive?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, active detoxes are essentially like everything from the kit that you can buy to detox your body in a Whole Foods or something, to like signing up for that detox cleanse that's coming up in January. I'm sure there will be a million of them. I think that a lot of them are not designed with fertility in mind. So if a detox leaves you depleted, it's actually like not working for you. So, in some ways, the fertility focused detox should actually be rejuvenating and replenishing nutrients, minerals in your body. And if it's not doing that, then it's really hard to say, like, hey, this is going to be a good thing. And there are a lot of detox kits, unfortunately, that will just like have you pooping 3, 4, 5 times a day. And it's like, okay, well, you pooped a lot. That's good. But like, what did this actually do for you? So it's really important that when it comes to a detox plan for fertility, you're working with someone who can design that plan for you in a way that is replenishing, is like actually strategizing to meet some goals, or like uh, to create some sort of change that's needed for you. It's not like some generic detox that you bought over the counter that you're like, hey, like I'm just gonna do this detox and I'm gonna get pregnant. The other thing about active detoxes is that if you are going to go on an active detox, no, like absolutely do not get pregnant for at least 3 months after that point, because you don't want to take any chances that you actually quote unquote detoxed, released a bunch of toxins into your system that your essentially your fat cells were holding on to for you. You released all of it into your bloodstream, and now you're pregnant and you're going to essentially pass it all through the placenta. Unfortunately, the placenta is not as much of a barrier as we have previously assumed that it was.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why it's extremely important to get like a health professional that can help you with this, that actually specializes in it. Like, where can they find you on your website as well?
Yeah, so our website is holisticfertilityinstitute.com. And we're also on Instagram, Holistic Fertility Doctor, and the same place on TikTok, Holistic Fertility Doctor.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, check her out, follow her stuff because like she said, like you need a professional to help you through this process as well and make sure, especially with detoxes, that you're doing it correctly and what's the reason for it and that you're replenishing. Real quick of just touching base on the food part as the other aspect, switching to organic to help get more nutrients and stuff. But is there any certain foods that you recommend those having that are wanting to start their fertility and conceiving journey?
Yeah, I love green leafy vegetables. I think that those are so important and they're probably the most mineral rich foods that we can consume. So the more you can integrate like kale and spinach and broccoli and cauliflower and like all of the things that most people are like, oh, really? You're gonna make me eat those? Yes, eat those vegetables that your mom tried to get you to eat and you never ate.
Yeah.
Those are all the good ones. In addition to that, what I would say about food is that most of us are on somewhat limited diets, even though we don't realize it. Most of us eat the same like 30 to 40 foods every single week. And the lack of diversity is problematic. So, and I have tried to like keep increasing our level of diversity, and it's quite an interesting challenge. We started out with like I think the goal is like 30 diverse plant foods in your diet every single week. And to get 30 a week is like a serious challenge, even for me, right? So, like, we eat pretty healthy, we eat lots of plants, and getting in 30 was like, oh my God, this is hard. Like, how do we do this? So I started making tons of soups because I could be like, oh, I can just throw it all in there and put it in the blender, and no one needs to know how many vegetables are in there.
Yeah.
So that was my like easy fix of how to get more vegetables. But yeah, the goal is really like our gut loves diversity. It thrives on diversity. It thrives on plant fiber. So a lot of times people are like, "Oh, what probiotic should I take for my fertility?" You don't need a probiotic. Eat more fiber. Eat it. Eat all of it. And the more diversity you have, the more diverse your microbiome is going to be. So that's really what we're going for. And it's actually relatively easy to do that with food rather than take more and more supplements.
Yes, yeah, I love that diversity of greens, getting in those vegetables, blend them up, make it into a soup or even a juice. That's a great strategy to have integrating it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for all that you shared. It's been absolutely amazing. And I think it's, transforming this world and infertility, helping people have more families. Is there any last things that you would like to mention or also like with people connecting to you? I know you mentioned you had a few freebies and giveaways.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would love to share our Divas Detox Guide. It's like a guide to detoxing your environment, and it goes through all of the different areas of your house. There's suggestions for like what product should I use? We get so many questions of like, is this okay? Is this okay? And it's hard. Like if you don't read labels or you're not even sure how to read a label for products like the eyeliner you want to use, it's really like, how do I do this? Like, just tell me what to, I don't even want to do this. Just tell me what to get.
Yeah.
So we've like put that guide together so that you can really have all of the information and if you're curious about how to read labels, then there's a little bit of like guidance on how we break it down so that you can go into a store, read a label, and be like, yeah, that's not something I should buy. So that'll be in the Divas Detox Guide, and I think that that would be a really wonderful place for people to start.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so guys, definitely check that out. It's going to be helpful a ton. As you can see, this podcast was just amazing. All that you shared was amazing on the summit. So thank you so much. I'll definitely post that link for you guys to grab it below. And it's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Chelsea.